So we went and got our Christmas tree tonight.
Did you get a
And
real one or like the
oh,
straw or
a real
the thing?
one's a real one's the only way to go.
Wow. Good for you.
Are you
I'm surprised you said that so strongly too.
really
I've never had a real Christmas tree in my life.
not once in your life?
Nope, all plastic.
Do you guys have a tree now? Because I know people with cats sometimes are weird about having Christmas trees.
Uh, so we do, and historically we've only had two cats. But we got a third cat. Well, my wife got a third cat this past year, and this is his first Christmas. We were a little worried about how he would react to the Christmas tree, and like sure enough, we had every right to be worried because he's been just sprinting up to it and like swatting ornaments and stuff. So I don't know. It definitely makes me feel less like, okay, in the future I should get a real tree because add more work for more chaos. I don't know. That equation doesn't add well for me.
No, no. I think if I had cats, which I would never have cats, I would probably wouldn't even get a tree. Like I know my sister who has cats, I think she has like a small tree that's like hidden and elevated and has talked about hanging it from the ceiling. So the cats can't get to it. But no, our worst our dog's going to do is smell it and no bad's going to happen from that. But we go and we get the tree. And I'm thinking like this is going to be a 2-hour process. Like we got to pick out the tree, we got to load it up, we got to do all this stuff. And we go like first tree my wife sees. She's like, "Great, let's get this tree." And so they just hand me a little slip and like, "Okay, go pay." And we go pay. And I'm thinking, "Okay, we have to go load it up." And they put it in the back of my truck, like loaded it
Wow.
up. Yeah. Like this is
Quality
how life should
service.
be. Yeah.
Are you gonna shout out like who was it?
Oakland Nursery, which if you're in Columbus, Ohio, Oakland Nursery is where it's at. I mean, it's expensive. I think it was $150 for the tree, but it got loaded up. It was easy. It was like packed up well. We just went and stuck it in the holder and cut off the like protective net, and it was good to go. Nice and
I'm
easy.
glad I'm glad you said what an expensive tree is because like if you would have just told me, like, yeah, expensive is like $500 or expensive is like $30, I have no barometer of knowing any different. I'd be like just nodding my head. Now I at least know the market if we ever are brave enough to get a real tree. But yeah, I think with these little furry assholes we have running around our house, I don't know if that's happening anytime soon.
No, no, I think you're out of the natural tree market. So
Yeah.
yeah. But other than that, I think today's topic's kind of fun because it's getting dark at 4 o'clock now, which is
Or
just awful.
If you're in Pittsburgh like me, it's just kind of dark all day.
I don't
It's
miss
like,
that.
yeah, the sun doesn't really come out too much. Yeah, no, I think it's a good topic and a bit of a buzzword and lifestyle, health, and wellness because it is so commonplace. Like I think we've all experienced this in some form or fashion, to some magnitude, and for whatever, whether an extended or short period of time. Yeah, topic today being burnout, and I think any listener and any of us, like if we think back, or it could be right now, like if we're thinking, a period of time in our life where we're like you that like just emotional or like physical exhaustion, where the one definition or word that kind of checks that box, you feel like, man, I'm feeling pretty burnt out right now. I think we've all felt that to some capacity. I know you and I working in, college athletics, it can be a tough and uh, a long grind. It can be, thankless job at some points too, and very rewarding, obviously as well. But I think again, it's easy to run into that and run into this concept of, that just exhaustion, whether it be from the physical, mental, or emotional stress, and not that it always comes from the work environment and a profession. I mean, it can come from home or family as well. Again, something I think is definitely worth us kind of chatting through and talking about because we've probably all experienced it at some point or another, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think everyone goes through it. I mean, I know I went through it both when I finished competing and went straight into coaching, and then again when you kind of find your groove in coaching, and then you go to Division 1, and it's just like a whole nother world, and you just grind every week. It's like the slow weeks. are still 5.5 days of work. And then the weeks where it's busy, you just roll straight through 7 days. And a standard day is 13 hours. You get there at 5 a.m. and you get home at 6 p.m. Just is what it is, you know? And I don't know how you're still doing it, to be honest.
Well, thankfully, I don't have the 13-hour days anymore. I've been able
That's
to
good.
hone my schedule a little bit. Yeah, definitely been there before. I think it's worth mentioning like what the we have this subjective idea of like, this is what burnout is, or I'm feeling burnt out, and like the word I keep using is just like something synonymous with like this fatigue and exhaustion. Right. I do like how the World Health Organization, WHO, how they kind of break it up and the dimensions that they put it into. And I think this can kind of hit home for a lot of people. And a couple of it we've already kind of said. The first one, especially like, that emotional exhaustion. I think we've all felt that time where it's like you get home after that 13-hour day and you're just like sitting on the couch, like, I got nothing left in me. Like, and it sucks because all I want to do now is go to bed, but it sucks because all I did today was like work, and maybe that day wasn't as rewarding as others, and that emotional exhaustion can definitely hit. Other things that I think are worth mentioning, again, from like what the WHO defines it as, is depersonalization and detachment from what you have around you is kind of the second piece that I think is interesting. Okay, for any listeners or you, hopefully, Justin, did you watch SpongeBob growing up?
Of course. Who didn't
Okay,
watch SpongeBob?
I know. I think that's sorry. That's a dumb question. Okay, you know the episode where Squidward was so excited because he found that community of all the other Squidwards, and he's like, "Oh my God, they play the clarinet and do yoga and all the stuff that I like to do, and that's great." And then it just shows this period of him getting more and more detached and bored and just emotionally distraught because it just became so monotonous. It's like that's what, like, when I think of depersonalization and detachment, I think of Squidward at the end of his tenure in the bigger Squidward neighborhood. And then he found the leaf blower and went on and had a blast and pissed the whole neighborhood off. So, but that kind of example of depersonalization, along with that emotional exhaustion, and then lastly, just that reduced personal accomplishment. So you keep saying this word like rewarding coming up. I think that's another thing that when we don't feel as if what our day-to-day operations are, like it's hard if you come after a full 7-day week of those 13-hour days, and then you sit back and you're like, man, like I did it, but now what? And it's kind of hard to stay motivated and stay disciplined like in that too. So, yeah, that emotional exhaustion, the depersonalization, reduced personal accomplishment or feeling of accomplishment, I think are three maybe more specific and particular ways to put the emotional side of what burnout is, according to who. But there's other effects as well, physical, systemic, and other things too. So, do you want to dive into any of those?
No, I think it's good that you classified the three categories that it can kind of fall into, and primarily because if you identify which one you more so are kind of struggling or going through, then it's easier to kind of find the remedy for that, which I know we'll get into a little bit later in the episode. But I think we've all experienced a little bit of all three of these. Like I know the reduced personal accomplishment, like remember we'd go through ACCs where it's like you're on this high and it's just intense for 4.5 days. And then you get home on Sunday or home on Monday, even sometimes, and you talk to like recruits and you're like, oh, okay, now it's just another year of this same thing. Like we got to do all this build up just to go through this exact same thing we just went through. And I mean, I know that can be tough for coaches, but even within an athletic career as well, it's like you finish your freshman year. It's like this brutal year that built up to the last competition. And then your coaches are kind of expecting you to dive back into it as soon as you can, even if you do take a little bit of a break. It's like, all right, well, like as soon as that mandatory break's over, like let's get rolling, let's get this moving again. We expect to be fully motivated from day one. And I think you can go through it there. And emotional exhaustion, I don't think there's a single adult in the world or ex-athlete in the world that hasn't been emotionally exhausted from trials and tribulations of training or life, and knowing life just gets busier and busier and busier as you get older. And you think they're going to get more time, when you get this promotion or a new job or get things figured out, and then something else just takes up that time. And I never thought that was going to be me, because how would we get busier than coaching? Like, there's no way to get busier. And then somehow I'm busier than I was when I was coaching, which makes no sense, but it happened. So I'm really excited we're diving into this one today.
Well, I think, all those three dimensions are big. I think there's other more physical effects that people start to see. It's easy for us to understand like those subjective, emotional, and mental feeling, but like there's some, health side effects along with this. Like, fatigue's an obvious one. Like, that can be associated with like insomnia, stress, maybe long-term risk associated with different cardiovascular things. I mean, when you're feeling this way, when you're stressed for extended periods of time, like weakened immune system, even digestive issues for a lot of people. Like there's a lot of these other health related factors that can go into play with like what burnout is and how it feels on top of just those emotional side of things. So, it's important to talk about. And I think in the realm of what we do, I think that there's many different ways that you can attack burnout. I think what we may want to hone in on a little bit, just because of, the nature of our positions, our experience, and what we enjoy and what we coach, is just going into a little bit more of like the science of exercise for mental health and how that can help remediate some of these symptoms. And I'll be the first one to say too, you talk about, or I'll not throw my wife under the bus, but I'll use her as an example. Like, she's in healthcare, she's in residency right now where she's doing those 13-hour days, and she has to, come home and then look up her patients for the next day, call her attending, do this and that. And like the last thing on her mind is like, okay, I need to get a workout in, because you are just so physically and emotionally drained. And we keep this consistent idea of workout in those contexts of being like, I have to there's no way I'm driving to the gym and, gonna do a 10-minute warm up and then lift some weights, do a little bit of cardio, come home. I'm way too tired for all that. We're talking about like the science of exercise and how it can remediate burnout. I don't mean going to the gym for an hour every day. I think that for a lot of people, that's great, and that like if you can do that, great, do that. But don't think that because you can't do that, you can't help use the strategy of exercise to help with these burnout effects. I think we talked about it in another episode of, I know in one of our guides on cortisol, when we dive into like, why do we feel this burnout and get away from a little bit of the subjectivity of it. I think these prolonged exposures to high levels of cortisol are part of what give this like emotional and depersonal type feeling, is just these long periods of high cortisol, and exercise being a great regulator for that cortisol is, I mean, I think the first point that we should kind of make. Again, when we talk about exercise, like it doesn't mean like, okay, you need to go to the gym and do this, or you need to jump in the pool, or you need to go lift weights. It can be a home gym. It can be my wife loves walks, like, or hikes when she can. Like that's her mode of exercise, and like that kind of therapeutic aspect of that, both physical and emotional regulation, just to get out, do something, get some blood flow, control cortisol levels. But there's other things that can go along with that. So regulating that cortisol is one thing. And we'll talk about maybe some like more actual strategies towards the end here. I know we have an episode on dopamine that I think was a real good chat, and maybe a little bit more on the other side of the spectrum of dopamine addiction, but still using exercise as a tool to increase like appropriate levels of dopamine, regulate serotonin, other neurotransmitters that help this really combat the effects, like the negative associated effects of cortisol or higher stress. Exercise is such a low hanging fruit for combating those bad effects of the feelings of burnout, and doing something that, like, again, not only chemically, we're increasing those endorphins, serotonin, we're regulating cortisol, but you go back to some of those other things like, feelings of the self-accomplishment. Like one thing that's very rewarding that I think we can all feel or say that we felt at some point in time is like you finish a workout that you didn't want to do, and you're like, damn, I feel freaking good now. I'm glad I did that. It's sometimes it really sucks to take that first initial push to say, I did just get home from a long day. All I want to do is nothing. But that kind of keeps that vicious cycle going. I think breaking out of that cycle to a small effect first, and it's like, okay, instead of nothing, great. I spent all this money on a Peloton that's kind of sitting in the corner of my room. I'm gonna do just want like the 10-minute ride before I get in the shower and go to bed. And boom, you did something, and you're gonna have that feeling of self-reward, that self-accomplishment. It doesn't take a lot to get both those chemical effects, those mental effects, and eventually those physical effects too. We're getting better heart health, we're improving body composition and other stuff like that. So I think a lot of merit to trying to instill some level of like discipline with a low level of exercise, even in those periods of high work, high stress, high burnout, to really help combat a lot of the negative effects that we associate with those things.
I'm so glad we're talking about this today because my day started pretty early and I've been on calls the entire day. And obviously, we're ending the day with this podcast, and I have to go get my workout in after this. And it's very easy to skip out and just go have dinner, but recognizing the facts of how it makes you feel and reminding me of the moment, like, all right, we got to get this done. We'll be better off for it. And also, we'll be better off long term as well. But yeah, it's one of those things that very easy to neglect. And also recognizing that, like you said, it takes very little stimulus to actually get the benefit from it. So just doing something is going to get you there, where it doesn't have to be an hour and a half long workout to get the benefits from it.
Yeah, exactly. And how good do you feel? Like maybe not at the
Great.
start, but by the end of it, like, and you're like, great, I had that long work day, also got my workout in. Like, you're probably going to sleep like a baby. Sleep quality is going to fly through the roof, which is also great. A lot of other, both hormone or different physiological benefits from that too. But yeah, it's rewarding at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's life changing. It makes that day feel like it was an actually truly productive day, and that you've accomplished everything. It becomes where it's not like a but. It's like, oh, I had a great job professionally, or I did a great job professionally today, but I didn't take care of my health. Like, you're knocking out both those things. So you're going to sleep better, feel better. The next day, you're going to kind of start it in a better place. But it's easy to kind of just surpass that and recognize you're tired at the moment and not recognize that you're going to actually feel better after you get that workout in.
And this obviously, like, there's a level of reason to this too. Like, we're not saying um, after every 13-hour workday that the best thing to do is go work out. Like, by all means, that's not the case for a lot of people. But I think the merit of prioritizing your health and prioritizing activity and exercise just over the course of a week or a month or just in general on your calendar is going to pose a lot more benefits than drawbacks too. So I think I'll kind of pull up several bullet points of what I think like some more practical ways to use exercise for maybe someone that again like hasn't or wants to, maybe doesn't really know where to start. You're that person that like, yeah, I work way too damn much and I come home, I don't have the energy, I don't want to do anything. What's step one? And really kind of have like five different steps here, five different considerations to have. First one is like, and we've said this a little bit, starting small but staying consistent is so much more rewarding long term than you getting this. And I'm guilty of this. I'll get this big ball of motivation and I'll be like, nope, I'm gonna hop on this new training plan. I'm gonna change all my meal prep, do this and that. And I do it for like 2 weeks and then I start to fall off. And then it's like I feel worse than when I started because it's like then I went another 2 weeks without doing anything because I got caught up and tried to do too much too quick. Like starting small and staying consistent, like that's got to be step one, right? Like that small can be as little as, and like I said, like my wife likes to go for walks, and unfortunately for her and me, our neighborhood is crazy hilly, so we got to climb up all over the place. But it's like that's something. That's more than nothing, and we have that small check when we can say, we accomplished. Second thing is going to be, maybe a little bit further down the road is if you can, like tailor those workouts or those exercises or those sessions to whatever your needs are. So needs meaning like more that can be either health related, like, okay, I have like health problems that I need to address. That needs to be the first thing that you attack. Like usually we're talking about like the really overweight individual, that we're not talking like super specific training. Like a need isn't like I need to run an Ironman. A need is like I need to take care of my health, or I need to kind of, find an avenue that kind of pulls me out of like this, depressive state. That's a need. So tailoring workouts to whatever and however you need to accomplish that need needs to be important too. But the third thing kind of ties along with that is like tailoring workouts to what you want too, right? Like prioritizing movements or training or sessions that you enjoy, because first, or to make that first step happen, or an easy way to make that first step happen of starting small and staying consistent, is starting small and staying consistent with the things that you actually like to do. Obviously, I like to lift weights. That's my, like, I live in a weight room pretty much. I keep using my wife as an example. She does not like to lift weights. And if I tried to convince her, like, no, this is how you need to do it. Like, you need to come to the weight room for 30 minutes a day. That's only going to make things worse, right? For her, because it's just going to feel like more and more of a chore. So I think prioritizing the needs that you have, but using strategies of the wants that you have too, is going to make that a lot easier too. Last couple things. Well, the next one I think is also really important. Is just setting realistic goals. And again, a lot of this kind of ties into play with one another. I think the more that we can be realistic about what we want to do, how we want to accomplish it, the more rewarding it is, and at the end run, and the more sense of like like our own personalization, our own self reward, getting out of that funk, kind of pulling ourselves out of that emotional, mental, and even physical state. Like, um, it's going to make that a lot better when the goals that we actually set are more realistic. Last thing, I don't know, somebody want to say it's not as important, but something I think is good to keep in mind is like practicing mindfulness with what we're doing. And I guess what I mean by that is almost using like these periods of time that you can set aside this 15, 30-minute part of your calendar or your day, to be like this reshaping your mind, training your mind and your body to think this is part of my like escape from those other things or institutions or people or tasks that are making me feel burnt out. So being mindful of that and treating it as that only makes those moments and opportunities of those 15, 30 minutes, whatever it is, more and more rewarding, more and more fulfilling. And then ultimately, again, like if we stay consistent with it, like we're healthier, better, more energetic, more regulated, and probably more happy to be around people at the end of the day too, right? So, quick recap there. Stay small, stay consistent, number one. Number two, tailor things to your needs if you have those needs. Three is do what you want. Number four, setting realistic goals around what you want. And then just be five, being mindful about using those times and those opportunities to like have that geared towards like this is my escape. This is where I can, separate myself from those other entities that are pushing me to that feeling of burnout.
I love that. I love that you kind of framed it up by, kind of, I guess, those steps that go into it. And also, the most important one to me is like, do what you want. Like, I think so many people get roped into like this is what they think they should be doing versus stuff that they actually enjoy, just falling into whatever they tried or whatever their friends are doing or whatever they're used to, and not stepping back and just being like, what do I actually like and what actually fills my cup and allows me to be the best version of myself for that day or the next day or the rest of your life because you actually enjoyed it. Because it's so easy just do whatever or whatever you're used to doing. Like we see that all the time with swimmers. Like how many times do you see swimmers and then a year or two after they graduate, they're running marathons and that's like the thing they do. And then, but you look 5-10 years later, so few of them are still running marathons because they're like, why did I just replace a sport where I was in the water for 2 hours with the sport where I'm running for 2 hours? Like, what was I thinking? And then they do something that's like normal or they stop working out for a while. So it's important to like take the time to actually identify something that you want to do versus something that's just what you're used to or what you feel like you have to do.
Yeah, and especially for like that level of like burnout or emotional exhaustion like significant enough, like I would almost qualify doing what we want as a need too. Like, guess what, dude? People may like make fun of the guys that like curl in the squat rack at the gym, but I'll be damned. At least that person is doing something that they enjoy. They feel better, and that's better than me feeling defeated at home and not doing anything, right? Okay, it may piss people off that want to squat, but that's their problem too. So it's like, hey, dude, if getting an arm pump every other day is like what helps you feel good, confident, then like who the hell is anyone else to tell you otherwise, right? Like I think there's merit to like a balanced training, obviously, but again, like no one should really tell you like what is right for you. Now, if you're an elite athlete, someone qualified should be telling you what's right for you or helping you identify what's right for you at least. But again, if we're the working professional that is feeling burnt out from whether it is profession or it's relationship or it's whatever, do what you want, enjoy that, enjoy training so that you can make it consistent and again have a lot more benefit out of it in the long run.
Absolutely.
I
Cool.
know I know you're going to go work out. I'm going to go eat. So I'm going to do the opposite of workout, but I got my workout earlier. I checked my box for the day, thankfully.
I was just checking my Instagram to see if we had any questions because I put on there if they had any questions. And I did get some questions, and they're all not appropriate to be on this podcast. So, no, we won't answer those questions, but we're going to start doing that. I'm going to start posting the day before we're doing podcasts and start getting some good questions. So, those are good questions and good conversations to have, but they're not podcast conversations. So,
There you go.
you go eat, have a good meal. We'll reconvene on the next episode. All right.
Yeah, and you enjoy that feeling of euphoria once you've completed your workout.
Can't wait. Can't wait. I'm gonna text you. I'm gonna let you know exactly how euphoric I am after making chicken Caesar wraps afterwards. I'm gonna enjoy those things.
Oh, dude, and then you're checking the box if you're eating a good healthy meal. Like, dude, you're killing it. This
I
day
know.
had nothing on you.
No, but my bed's gonna feel fantastic tonight. I cannot wait.
I'm sure.
Yep. All right. Well, if you're listening, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Business Fit Podcast, and stay tuned for future episodes.